Welcome to another episode of Exit Philosophy. He's Mal, I'm Griff. And before we get going, I just want to thank people again for subscribing, for watching us on YouTube, listening where you get your podcasts. And don't forget to like, share with your friends, and leave us a review, leave us a comment. That being said, this is a big week in baseball, winter meetings week. And sometimes it's very disappointing, Mal. Others, it's a busy time. What do you see this week, given the fact that, and it's in Orlando, but not at the Swan and Dolphin, which is the Disney hotels. It goes there probably once every 5 years.
It has.
And now it's in Orlando, but it's at a different resort hotel. What do you see in terms of being busy or being traditionally frustrating with media and fans waiting for moves, waiting for free agent signings, waiting for big trades?
Yeah, I think it's going to be more of the same. I don't think you can expect too much at these meetings. A lot of times, plant some seeds here and there, but you don't need the meetings to get business done anymore, correct? So like I said before, it's kind of slowly shifted to just the celebration of the game. The industry gets together, meetings are had, every team has their own meetings and doing some strategies and things like that, but it's less about actually signing guys and making trades, because you don't need to do that. They're doing that 24 hours, 24/7 these days. So it's more of a celebration of the game. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's really good to bring attention to baseball. And if you get a signing or two, which I know they encourage, that does help. So hopefully we get a couple of signings just for news, but there's less and less of that nowadays anyway. So.
Yeah, I agree with you in terms of the changes to the winter meetings. I've covered probably equally on both sides of the fence as PR and in media. So that's about 20 some years on each side. And I really enjoyed the old days. And there were atrium hotels with a big center area and probably 50 floors. And everybody knew where the team suites were. So you would have media looking up from the lobby and seeing
Right.
which team entourage was headed on which floor, and everybody would get together and go, yeah, our team is on that floor. Well, they must be talking. So that was a little bit of the charm of the winter meetings, but now you don't even have to leave your room, and you said that, you mentioned that. Very rarely do you see the old school sending scouts down to the lobby to talk to other scouts and bullshit them and tell them what's available and then come back and reel them in. You don't see that anymore. And I sort of miss it. But I guess technology has changed things. They've reduced the meetings to 3 days. And it used to be minor league meetings hosting major league teams. And now it's major league teams hosting national broadcast media, and as you said, sort of making a whole let's keep us in the news type things, something at which the NFL is expert.
Yeah, and you're going to see a lot of rumors and a lot of nonsense fly throughout the week, and for most fans, they've got to realize it's almost all bullshit. It's just kind of everybody's speculating, even from the big national guys. So I can remember, just being in the lobby and being approached by a prominent national media guy, just striking up a conversation. And we had a conversation and I said almost nothing of value. And then he turned it into some sort of rumor. And I'm just going, wow, this is how this works, is it? So
it's funny you describe
when you're reading stuff, just take it with a grain of salt. Usually, it's kind of fun, but it's good for the game. But most of it is fabrication.
Yeah, that's exactly the experience I had in the 4 years with the Jays. Is that you had, and it's more competitive now, obviously.
Yeah,
because people like to go. Jeff Passan was first on this, or Mark Lansing was first on this, and so that's where the competition is right now. And I would get a call and it would talk, would discuss, and he'd go, have you heard about, are you guys on the verge of signing so-and-so or trading so-and-so? And you go, well, I haven't heard anything, and you'd think that we would know, haven't heard anything. And then you go watch the same guy on TV going, my sources did not deny.
That's right. It's all fun. It's all tricky. I know, it gives you a good chuckle. So there's lots of news coming. It's fun. Like I said, it's fun for the industry.
Yeah. I don't think there's much of a downside. There's a lot of fan bases that take it very, very seriously. Like we're hearing from the Mets fan base who seem to believe they're getting all Yankee hand-me-downs, which maybe they are.
Right, maybe they are so far.
They got Devin Williams, they got Juan Soto, they got. But it's sports. It's fun. It should be taken that way. And enjoy the week as it comes up. The first item of business is going to be the ERAS committee. And we've talked about it before, but it'll be interesting. There's 8 names on the committee. There's 16 voters, and they're players that were overlooked by the baseball writers, by the official 10-year window that players had. You've got Carlos Delgado, Dale Murphy, Gary Sheffield, Don Mattingly, Fernando Valenzuela, Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, Jeff Kent. I mean, there's a lot of those. I'd say the majority of those players have a really legit argument to be in the Hall of Fame. And there's a lot of fans that are going, oh, they'll all get in. Well, no, they're not all going to get in. And very few, if any, will get in. But do you see any name there that you really favor in terms of getting in?
Well, as we've talked, I mean, obviously I'm biased towards Don Mattingly, but I think outside of Clemens and Bonds, I mean, that's an entirely separate conversation that isn't going to, that's not happening. But I think Dale Murphy and Don Mattingly are prevailing favorites, but I still don't understand how you ignore Carlos Delgado. I just, when you look at it from 30,000 feet, and I get it, he was in a little different era, but his numbers speak for themselves. It's just hard to deny the offensive dominance of Carlos. But I'm really curious to see the vote and how these guys view that, because those are the 3 names for me that I don't know about you, but Mattingly first, just there seems to be a buzz about him. Whether he gets it or not, and those other 2 guys, where do you feel Carlos fits in there? And it feels like he's truly getting overlooked.
Yeah, I think Carlos has number. I mean, the dangerous thing about computers and stats and breakdowns is that you can make anybody look like a Hall of Famer who has legitimate numbers up there. I mean, you can compare to other guys who are in the Hall and go, well, if they're in the Hall, he should be in the Hall. But I've always felt, we've talked about it, I felt that Carlos Delgado was, by the time he left Toronto and went to Florida and then went to the Mets, he was at the tail end of his career. And there's so many retired Hall of Fame voters in the New York area. Through the years, they've had 2 teams and all these, they're still eligible to vote. And they saw not the Carlos Delgado we saw in Toronto. And to me, that is the big problem for his candidacy. He's clearly got the talent, the charisma, the good teammate aspect. But it's just that by the time a lot of voters saw him, they're going, well, nothing special about him. But you look at his numbers, and they are Hall of Fame worthy, in my opinion.
It's one of the most intriguing votes, in a while, I think. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what shakes out.
Yeah. And I think there's a maximum number that each voter can put on their ballot. So that sort of puts a crimp in it when you have 8 legitimate candidates. I mean, Fernando Valenzuela did so much, but to me, in an individual market, I mean, he brought the Latino fan back to Dodger Stadium after Walter O'Malley and the Dodgers had stolen their Chavez Ravine and thrown people out to build a stadium. And and he sort of saved the day for that generation, starting in 1981 when he was a rookie and broke the hearts of Expos fans.
That's right.
But so his is more of a, and being probably the greatest pitcher from Mexico deserves some consideration. But they all have angles and arguments, and it'll just be interesting to see what the result is.
Yep, agreed.
On Tuesday, we just got word that the Blue Jays and Scott Boras are having a press conference at the headquarters hotel, which, as we point out, is a new hotel. So it's not the Disney resort. I wonder if there was a falling out there. But Dylan Cease, 7 years, $210 million, a lot of deferred money, a huge signing bonus. What was, and I remember that when we spoke about potential free agents, that we weren't that big on the Dylan Cease possibility of coming to Toronto. What do you think the deciding factor was? And ultimately, how big a deal is it for the Blue Jays? I think it's huge for them.
I think it's massive right away. They're letting everybody know they're the top of the heap when it comes to spending money, as they should be. But still, it's really nice to see that that they're using their might to bring in top guys. And I love, we talked about it last week, Griff. I love that when they went out and did it right away. I thought, funny, I think they signed him the same day we did the podcast, just after it. But I was a big Suarez fan. I thought he would be more of a guy I'd go after. But you can't argue with the aggressiveness and the talents. I mean, there's things you can nitpick with him for sure. I mean, he's got command issues. It's kind of been a bit of a tease his entire career. But I'm going to guess the thing they love is that he's very reliable, and that's important to these guys. I think guys who take the ball, don't get injured a lot. And I think for a team that has money to spend, I think it was a great move. I love getting ahead of the market, and I love landing a guy and building your depth in the rotation. I thought it was imperative to go get a starting pitcher, and they did it. We'll see where they go from here. It sounds like they're not done, which they shouldn't be, obviously. But there's very little to complain about. Maybe you don't like the player as much as how much it costs, but you can debate that. But I like the aggressiveness of the move. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it before about the Blue Jays specifically usually having to add term to a contract. I mean, you look at Cody Ponce; they gave him 3 years, and the estimate on MLB Trade Rumors was that he was going to get 2 years, so they gave him an extra year. So maybe that was the difference with Dylan Cease, is giving him a 7th year instead of 6 or 5. And it's not our money. So if they spend $210 million and structure it so that the impact is lesser on the luxury tax and the impact is lesser on this year's payroll, God bless them, because that is what competing for a championship and getting back to the World Series is all about, is how you spend your money, is the ability and willingness to spend money. And they did that, as you said, early in the process. And that's what's surprising, because Scott Boras usually waits out the market. Scott Boras usually is a trendsetter in sort of describing what the market is going to be. And it usually drags on until January. But in this case, I guess, and recall at the GM meetings how he was praising the Blue Jays as competitive and players on the market and everything. So he knew that there was something brewing there, because that was only, do you realize it's only been 34 days since the World Series ended?
Is that it?
That's crazy.
With this weather, it feels like it's been 3 months.
Right.
Holy smokes.
But what do you think the factor of Cease having a down year? And when you talk about command issues, to me, guys with great ability to miss bats translates to a guy having command issues because you got to throw so many pitches. You got to, there's more of a chance that you're going to work deeper into counts and get into a walk situation or whatever. So I dismiss that. If a guy has 200 and whatever strikeouts that he's got, then and done it for 5 straight years, I'll forgive him for a few additional walks because he can pitch his way around that, pitch his way out of that. And the fact that the Blue Jays did it early in the offseason, early in the process, with the toughest agent out there, I think sends a message to other free agents, to other teams, to other GMs, and I don't think there's any downside to it.
No, and I think it puts the other teams in the AL East on notice, right? Or particularly the Yankees, I think, that you better be careful about waiting things out. You've already taken a top end guy off the market, so I think it puts heat on. You've seen the Red Sox make a couple of moves too. I think it just puts the heat on the division a little bit, which I think is great. You're just not the big boy in New York anymore. This kind of 92-esque, 93 when the Jays were at the top of the heap with finances. So it makes the division and makes it just makes it more interesting. This part of the world, that's for sure. Makes the division a whole lot more exciting when you've got Red Sox, Yankees, Blue Jays, and you can't discount the other two clubs. Hopefully, the Orioles figure out how to not run their thing into the ground because they got so much young talent there. But it certainly makes AL East intriguing already.
Yeah, I'm speaking of the Orioles. I mean, they are a team that's classic. We're on the verge of something huge when they won 100 games, and then as soon as it started going south, they started to panic and started dealing part of the young player staff and then dealt their best pitcher, Grayson Rodriguez, when he's healthy. Doesn't make any sense because their farm system is deep in position player talent. Their major league roster is deep in position player talent. So they went out and got a position player for their best starting pitcher. I think that they're on the road to mediocrity, especially in a division that's as tough traditionally and annually as the AL East. And I'm not that big on the Rays, although MLB Network said that they'll be competing hard this year because they signed Cedric Mullins. The Orioles could finish last with Cedric Mullins. He didn't have a great time in New York with the Mets. So
he's on his last legs, Griff. You know what I mean?
So Dylan Cease.
He's had his best days he's had already, Cedric. So
yeah. But Dylan Cease, 2025 was probably the most head-scratching year in a while. And that might have been the best time to get him, but then you get people questioning, why pay him so much after a year like that? But you're counting on a bounce back, I assume. And he is only 30 years old.
Yeah, for sure. And it's the old thing about his underlying numbers, all that stuff. You never quite know. I think if there is a concern, 7 years is a long time. There's no doubt about it at that age. I mean, so you're banking on 4 or 5 good years and then figure it out after that, right? So, and you can get some real, look at Gausman. You can get some real top end quality years at this age when guys have kind of figured it out a little bit, figured out who they are, and figured out how to pitch and be more efficient. So, I mean, clearly they're building this to try and win a World Series in the next couple of years, 3 years. And obviously I like it because we know their pitching staff is losing guys. This is Gausman's last year. We will talk about Berrios, obviously, but you've added a front end guy and kind of a Gausman replacement. So, I think that's kind of the idea. So let's see what we get. You don't know. You don't know. Gausman, I think, has been more of a pitcher than Cease. But he certainly got all the tools still in Cease. Sure, it's a lot of money. But I mean, they got the guy. At the end of the day, they got the guy. That's what's important.
Yeah, the Blue Jays have done so well with pitchers in their mid to late 30s. And their experience in how to handle them, their experience in what they can bring. The fact that Dylan Cease is another pitcher who's never missed a start, who's started 32, 33 games each of the last 5 years since COVID, since the 2020 season. Those are factors that don't make you scratch your head about being 30 to 35 years old, which he's going to be through the bulk of this contract. But yeah, they've had great success and with pitchers like that. So I don't think they're worried about building a rotation centered around 3 or 4 of those guys. And then you've got Trey Savage coming in. You look down the line, and they've probably got another couple of young pitchers that are a year or 2 away.
Yeah.
So I think starting the offseason by signing Dylan Cease, and then we'll get to Cody Ponce, who's not a youngster. He's the same age as Jose Berrios, signed for the same term, 3 more years. But I wrote a column yesterday, and we'll talk about Cody Ponce, because whereas Dylan Cease had a bad year going into his free agency, well, relative to what he had done before, Cody Ponce had a breakout year. I mean, he had 2 shitty years with the Pirates. He went to Japan and wasn't that great for whatever reason. And then he goes to Korea and goes 17-1, 1.89, 252 strikeouts, sets a KBO strikeout record for a single season. I mean, there's not much you can raise that level, except for the fact that he's only done it once and he's 30 years old.
Yeah, like it's a bit of a, I would not even gamble. I mean, it's $10 million, which sounds ridiculous, but it's intriguing, right? Clearly he's worked on his stuff. So, but I mean, the Korean League's not the Japanese league, and it certainly isn't Major League Baseball, but there's a lot to be intrigued about. It's not that he was just good in Korea. He was completely dominant. You couldn't be much better. So it's interesting to see what it's going to look like when you come back and face the. I think it's a great move, especially where they're at. You add a Cease, a top end Major League starter, and a bit of a flyer on a Cody Ponce, who nowadays we can tell you what his spin rates are and what his stuff is and what he's throwing and the improvement. It's not smoke and mirrors, right? So, I mean, obviously it's got to play at the major league level. So we won't know that for sure, but that's an intriguing arm, and it gives them some more depth. I think they've done a really good job right out of the chute, adding to the depth that we talked about they needed to do.
Well,
there was some real concerns with that rotation. Bassett, Scherzer, all those guys gone, and Berrios. So you got to like it.
Yeah, I wrote a column on griffstopitch.com yesterday, which would be Thursday, about he's more than depth. To me, he's a replacement for Jose Berrios, and Jose Berrios is still there. But we've talked about the way that the front office alienated Jose Berrios, but rightfully so. I mean, they got to Game 7 of the World Series and quite possibly should have won it. So that's when you put personal sort of sentiment aside. So, but the bottom line is that Jose Berrios is not happy here anymore. The bottom line is that as a 5th starter, the Jays are on the hook for $66 million over the last 3 years of his contract, $18 million this year and 24 in each of 26 and 27, or in each of 27 and 28. Right. And he had an opt-out after this season. So if you replace Berrios and the uncertainty there with Cody Ponce and the certainty of 3 years, $30 million, he's no longer depth. He's the back end of the rotation. He's a regular starter. Now you have to decide what to do with Jose Berrios. And I think that with the difference in total value of the contracts, 30 million for Ponce and 66 million for Berrios, that if they're only going to keep Ponce and try and deal Berrios, that they have the difference, which is $36 million to play with in terms of equalizing a trade, giving the team that takes Berrios' contract, giving them a differential up to $36 million, and they'll be what they had budgeted for anyway. But they'll have more certainty with their new guy than they did with Berrios. And the thing about Berrios being upset, he had an escalating clause for those final 2 years that involved innings pitched in 25 and 26, total innings pitched. So it could be argued that when they took him out of the rotation at 165 innings or 164, whatever it was, and then gave him that elbow injury, which he's never had an injury in his career, that they were maintaining a level of innings pitched where it's going to be difficult. And it started at 350 innings over the 2 years. And then every 25 innings, he got more money. So I can see very many reasons why Berrios, and then he was left off the roster in all series. Then he was also didn't show up for introductions, wasn't in town, obviously.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's every reason to believe the evidence is there if you just analyze that he's not the happiest camper in the world, and there's a good chance he would opt out. And we've talked about it. So now they have certainty. They have money that they can throw in a deal for Berrios. And if some team is only paying 10, 12, $14 million for Jose Berrios, there are teams that would take that.
Yeah, I'm not so sure he's going to opt out with that price tag, but I think you're on the right track as far as how you're going to be able to move him, because nobody's going to probably trade for that contract as it sits. So you're going to have to figure out how to pay down some of it to move on from Jose. I'm sure that's something they're trying to figure out how to do. But sometimes you get to that point, Griff, and who knows how it was handled. Like I said, it doesn't matter. He's clearly not happy, and sometimes it's just time to move on for both parties. You've been in one spot, and it's not, with all due respect to Jose, it's not the first time he may have been mishandled. You know what I mean? I can remember a playoff game particularly. So it's not the first thing that would upset Jose. So, while it made sense to put him in the bullpen, or at least, whether on the roster or not, it just may be time to find a new place for him and see what you can get, and, throw some money down and give him a fresh start too, and just kind of move on from that. So I'm hoping that makes the most sense, because ideally you could come in, you need a lot of starters, but how do you manage that?
Yeah, you don't need that many starters at 10 million.
Then Ponce isn't in your rotation out of the chute. You know what I mean? So.
But I'm glad you brought up that playoff game with Berrios, because we're 100% sure that's where his disgruntlement started. Is that a word? Sure. Disgruntlement? It is now. But like, even if they told him before the game what the strategy was, that Kikuchi is going to piggyback on you at the right time, he apparently wasn't aware that it was after 13 hitters when he was dealing and hadn't allowed a run.
Yeah. Like, untouchable. Yeah.
Yeah. Here comes Schneider, and Berrios is not like Max Scherzer. I'm sure he felt like yelling at John, but he wouldn't, because he's too much of a gentleman for that.
Right.
And that's where it starts. 13 hitters in against a team that traded you to Toronto, and you got something to show them. Yeah. And then you're given just 13 hitters, and you haven't been hit hard, you haven't allowed a run. That's crazy. And that is where it started. And you could just see he would never, in all the trips into the clubhouse or watching him in post game or talking to him pregame, He's very proud of that streak of 7 straight full seasons of exactly 32 starts. And he was on pace for that. He was on pace for that in mid-September. And they pulled the rug out from under him and said, "Oh, you're in the bullpen now." So the injury didn't happen before being pulled out of the rotation.
No.
And he gets 1 relief appearance. His dreams of continuing that streak go up in smoke. And the Jays needed every win. It's not like, they were in a situation where it didn't matter.
No, they needed every single one.
Needed every win. So he was taken out of the rotation, Trey Savage in. But the bottom line of insult is that they preferred at one point in September to go with a bullpen game instead of having Berrios go out and start.
Yeah.
Right. And that's a bottom line decider right there. So it's not going to work having Berrios in that clubhouse or around this team and having 6 legitimate starters in the rotation. It's not going to work. So that's the way to do it. Use that differential money, $36 million between Ponce's salary and Berrios' salary. Use that to work with a new team, a new home for Berrios, and give them as much money as they need up to that amount.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense for everybody.
So Cody Ponce, we recited his numbers in Korea. But the bottom line question to me is this guy was not very good. 92, 93 miles an hour in Pittsburgh, went to Japan, then to Korea. And that seems to be more and more players doing that in terms of instead of bouncing back and forth from AAA to the majors and then not really getting a full shot. They go over to the Pacific Rim, to Asia, to Korea or Japan, and they reestablish themselves. Do you see that as an ongoing trend that could? I mean, Easton Lucas just did it, right? I mean,
no, I think it is a trend for sure. I'm sure Trevor Bauer would have liked to get on that trend, but
well, that's a completely different story.
That hasn't worked so well even for his performance, anyways. But hey, it does make a lot of sense. Guys are resurrecting careers over there. There's less pressure. What's that?
Eric Lauer.
Yeah, you can work on stuff, right? Certainly less pressure to perform and perfect your game and make another run because guys are proving that they can come back and be successful. And like anything, Major League Baseball or any sport, it's a copycat thing, right? You see somebody do it, have success, so you start to say, "What's going on over there? Let's give it a shot. Let's give it a shot." And again, like his numbers are insane in last year.
Yeah,
like it's video game stuff.
Well, you look at when you talk about guys coming back from over there, and then and you look at Eric Lauer. He's in the same clubhouse with Easton Lucas, and Lucas has initial success as his 5th starter, replacing Bowden Francis, who had initial success. Yeah. And so I'm sure that Lucas talked to Lauer about the experience, and then sort of talked his way into this deal that's about to happen where he's being outrighted or he's being released and he's going to sign with either a Japanese or a Korean league team. So I'm sure that the clubhouse influence that he heard from Lauer is a big factor in that.
Well, and what would you rather do? Toil away in AAA for a random MLB club with the hopes you get a look, a brief look where it's hard to impress, or a full year to really establish what you might become? It makes a lot of sense to go that route right now because Easton Lucas is not getting an opportunity in the major leagues in his current resume, let's say. So it's a very smart move if you don't mind, obviously, going over there. It's a certainly different experience.
Apparently, the standard is you get $1 million. They pay living expenses, and you pitch once a week. So it seems, and you don't get sent to the minors. You don't have to take the car service pass from Buffalo to Toronto.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Sounds like a pretty good deal to me. I take that.
No doubt. Rotation for 26. If we're going to agree that Berrios is not going to be a part of the 5-man rotation, here's my thought on setting it up, because they seem to really be going, and the split finger seems to be a key to this Jays rotation. I mean, you got Gausman, you got Savage, and now you've got Ponce, who's added that. And I didn't finish the thought. He was 92 to 93 miles an hour with the Pirates, and now he's up to 97 and has added a change and a split. And like, his stuff is different. The hitters are not as good. I'm not saying, I think we had Ironbacks who might be able to get Korean hitters out, a certain segment of them, if you pick the right window. But so right. My Jays rotation from opening day would be Kevin Gausman, out of respect. I want to keep Savage away from Gausman. I don't want him going back to back in a series. Dylan Cease 2, Savage 3, Bieber, and then Ponce. What do you think about that?
I mean, it's hard to argue with that. Like I said, the only thing and the danger of not being able to bring a Berrios back is, I mean, you often need 10 guys, Griff, throughout a season. Like, it's nice to think.
Not often, every year.
I mean, so that five group is amazing. I like it. Like, find me a better one. Like I'm sure we could argue here and there about the best rotations, et cetera, but the Blue Jays are going to be in the conversation. Now, you never know what happens. Well, Yusevich is a rookie. Bieber's still not buying it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we've talked about that.
Something that doesn't seem right there. But I mean, you've got to like the way it's set up. It's awfully impressive in a name recognition point of view, and you'd have to be excited as a Blue Jay fan, no question.
Well, just think back to last opening day and how sort of excited at a lower level were Blue Jays fans with the rotation, which included number 5 being Bowden Francis, who had a tremendous end of season the year before. So you had Bowden Francis, and Berrios was in there, and we're saying that he's not. Who else was in that rotation that's coming back? Is it just Gausman at this point from the opening rotation? Because Scherzer's not there, Bassett's not there. So you got one guy, and the rotation might even be stronger than what you considered a strong rotation the year before with Scherzer, Bassett, Berrios, Gausman, and Bowden Francis. I mean, it's crazy to think that you have that much turnover and there's more optimism.
Yeah, it's. I mean, 100%. I didn't even think about it like that. So you have to kind of tip your hat on how they've remade the rotation and where it can go. And again, that's using your financial might and good on them. That's what they need to do, and that's how you be a contender in this division in this league. So it's going to make for an interesting rest of the offseason, and it just makes it, it's so much better baseball in this area when the Blue Jays, are competitors and contenders. So far so good.
Do you think that we're underestimating the intangibles that are being lost by the turnover in personnel from a team that went to the World Series? I remember in 81 with the Expos, they lost the game 5, the final game to the Dodgers, Rick Monday. And then going to 82, they felt, we need to make changes. And Larry Parrish, who was the heart and soul of the clubhouse, the third baseman, was traded for Al Oliver. And Al Oliver was a better hitter, everything else. Yeah. But Larry Parrish was a key part of that clubhouse, and they never got back. And like, now here, let me just go down a list of things here. You got Scherzer's passion, and even though his numbers on the field don't reflect it, we're talking intangibles. Bassett, quirkiness and keeping people sort of loose because he's strange. Bo's aura if Bo doesn't come back. Berrios' professionalism and calmness in the clubhouse. And what if Santander doesn't bounce back? What if Springer acts his age? What if Savage pitches like a rookie and Ponce pitches like he's still a Pirate? I mean,
still a Pirate.
I mean, there's so many factors, and we're just assuming that none of these are going to.
Let's hope not.
But do you think intangibles are overrated?
I don't think they're overrated. I just don't think all those things you mentioned are necessarily all positives. We're looking at the positive side of it. I think there's definitely going to be a change in the clubhouse chemistry. There's no doubt about that. But that doesn't always mean it has to be negative. I think, Bo can be sulky when things don't go well. So there's that aura. Scherzer can be a pain in the ass if it's not going well. So can Bassett. So there's that side of the coin. Things you look at the upside when you guys are winning. So do I think it matters? I do agree with you. I think there's things they bring to the table that need to be replaced. So I think that's part of what you find out in spring and then sometimes over the first couple of months of the season. And then you may have to adjust here and there to find that right mix of guys, because I don't think it's overvalued, but I just don't think it's necessarily bad coming in. You know what I mean? I don't think it's necessarily with the changes going to be a negative. We'll see. But they are factors. You're right. You've seen it. I've seen it. I've seen upper management realize how important those intangibles are to winning when you actually deal with human beings. So that's part of the journey. That's part of the journey of this club. It'll be interesting to watch.
I have this theory that, first of all, you have to agree or not agree with me that the Jays still need to add one position player and one bullpen member.
I agree.
And to me, and you can argue this point, I don't think that the bullpen guy needs to be a bona fide experienced closer. I think just a huge arm out there with the ability to pitch the ninth inning. But there's plenty of that type of pitcher out there. But let's go first to the position player. If we both agree that they need one position player still, because you look at a projected lineup and without Bo, you get to the 4, 5, 6, and you go, oh my God, Varsho's in that group, and there's a couple other guys, and you go, oh shit. So they need a thumper, and it could be Bo, but we don't believe so. Do you believe? And I'll argue that Clement and Barger are currently the most valuable assets in that position player group because of their versatility. And that allows you to look at different positions in trade or free agency, and then you just adjust what you have accordingly. I mean, I think it's a luxury that they have with Clement and Barger.
If they perform to the level they did last year, for sure. I think Ernie is a bit more of a lock as far as what he brings to the table. Barger's more the fluctuation, higher upside, lower floor type guy. You're right, though. It allows you to kind of find the market, whether that's an outfielder like Tucker or a third baseman or second baseman, whatever you could do, trade, free agency. You're right. It gives you flexibility, but that flexibility only matters if those guys continue to perform the way they did last year, right? Because if they don't, then you don't want that.
Yeah,
but that's the thing.
We're talking the value being in the off season. I mean, they'll have to do it once the season starts. But right now, you can look and honestly say, I'd be comfortable with Barger at third base or in right field. I'd be comfortable with Clement at second base or third base. So that there's that flexibility that not very many teams have in terms of shopping in the off season for one talented position player to hit 4, 5, or 6 in that order, because I don't like the 4, 5, 6 as it currently stands.
No, it does give you a lot of flexibility, and they're in a really good position. And like we said, by getting some business done early, they've really put themselves ahead of the pack in a nice position. Obviously, there's still work to do. Lots to be done. key signings, whether, like I said, or a trade or what have you. But you have to like how they're positioned relative to other clubs in the division. You just kind of have to like where they're at. So, you're right. They've got a lot of flexibility and a lot of options. They can go different ways. I have no idea which way they're going to go. I'm curious. I mean, Tucker would be the big fish. That would certainly put them at the front of the pack in a lot of ways. But who knows? Who knows where he's going to end up? But at least they're in that mix right now.
To me, Tucker at the projection of 11 years, 400 million is not worth to the Blue Jays what Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is at 14 and 500 million. He's not worth that same amount of money, AAV, because of what Vlad has already done for this organization and what he's doing now as the face of the franchise and a visible recruiting tool for Latin ball players and for the Caribbean and for, like, to me, Tucker would not be as valuable for that money as Vlad is for his money.
Well, like you said, though, it's not your money. If they can fit it in the budget, I guess who's to argue? One thing Tucker is one hell of a hitter, especially when he's going well. So you're right with all those other things, but there's few guys on the market can have the impact Kyle Tucker can. So whoever lands a Kyle Tucker is probably going to improve their offense dramatically. So and I think the Blue Jays need to improve their offense. So I mean, hey, there is a limit to everybody spending, right? So there's only so much money to go around, and the Blue Jays have spent an enormous amount of money on that stadium. So I don't think people realize they're not exactly making a lot of money right now. They're not. There's a lot to pay for. So, I mean, there are limits to what they spend, but, they're doing a good job so far.
So, obviously, if they're going to add one player, it would be either Kyle Tucker or Bo. And if they lose both of those, then they would have to look for a plan C. But do you think there's no way that Bo does not come back as a second baseman? If he signs, he's going to be a second baseman.
Oof. I don't know why he'd want to do that. So that doesn't make a lot of sense when you're.
Well, we've already said that we didn't think he was coming back, and that die was cast 3 years ago.
Yeah, I agree. And I think Bo is a shortstop, and I think he wants to get shortstop money in free agency, and he's waited a long time for this. So I have a hard time seeing Bo play second base immediately in the near future. And knowing his competitiveness, I don't think he believes he's a shortstop. I just can't imagine there isn't a big market for a quality player like Bo Bichette, quality hitter especially.
Well, Mal, you know how I like to break down numbers in the traditional sense, not in the I'm going to poke my glasses here and spit numbers out of a computer type way. I'm like an old school numbers cruncher. So I broke down the team payroll as it currently stands, and here's what I got. Last year's end of season payroll, and I'm not talking luxury tax numbers because there's moments where I get frustrated looking at luxury tax numbers, like when they say that Dylan Cease's contract isn't really worth 210. It's only worth 146 because of current dollar value. Bullshit. It's worth 210. Anyway, so here's my breakdown of the team
People
payroll.
would argue with you, but that's correct. Okay, go ahead. What's your breakdown?
Team payroll for 2026. They ended the season with a $254 million payroll. So let's say they just want to use that as a starting off point and see what they can do in terms of staying at that, around that same number, because that's always what Mark Shapiro will always tell you, is that, they have the ability to spend the same amount of money.
Right.
Well, to start with $254 million, there's 8 pitchers under contract: Gosman, Bieber, Ponce, Cease. I'm not counting Berrios, Hoffman, Jimmy Garcia, Wyrod, and Lauer, who's the only one of that group going to arbitration. So you got $95.9 million for 8 pitchers. Now you got 2 catchers, Kirk and Heineman, 9.7. You got 3 infielders committed to guaranteed contracts: Vlad, Andres Jimenez, and Ernie Clement, who's an ARB guy. $60.1 million. Of course, most of that is Vlad. You got outfield 4: Springer, Santander, Straw, and Dalton Varsho going to ARB. That's 62.3. So that here it is, 17 players. Those 17 players, $228 million. So that leaves 9 players for $26 million. Your under control guys who are mortal locks to make the team: you Savage, Varland, Fisher, Fluharty, Barger, Schneider, Lucas. So that's 8 guys. Say they average around $1 million. So that leaves you $18 million to sign one guy. What do you think of that?
Yeah. If you don't move on from somebody or something like that.
Right, but that's just the sort of outline. So you do have money that you can spend.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair. I don't think they're going to go a whole lot higher than that. Right, but do you do that? It obviously precludes you adding a big ticket item, doesn't it? So
you would have to first of all get rid of Berrios, which I'm assuming is going to happen. And then if you added a big ticket item, you'd have to sort of and if you're paying attention closely, I didn't have Brendan Little on that list at all. I think he's gone.
Do you really?
In terms of a trade.
Yeah, right. I mean, I don't know if he's done. I think
his level of trust is done.
It's not high at the moment, but I think he probably comes back and they see what they have and see if they can build it back. But he was not a confident man, let's just say that. But you're right. There are limits to the payroll. It's not like they're going to go out and just add Tucker and Bo and bullpen guy. It's just that there are limits. So I think people need to be, they need to understand that it's just not, a bottomless pit there. So like you say, just getting back to last year's payroll, you got 18, 20 million bucks to spend. So if they go beyond that a little bit, they're going to need to move some stuff out to get anything major done. And maybe they do. But I can't see this team busting $300 million in payroll. It just seems
that doesn't seem part of the equation for the Blue Jays team.
No, I mean they're a public company too, right? So there are people to answer to, and like I said, there's a lot of bills to pay still with that stadium. So can't get too crazy.
I think the way the season ended, getting to the World Series, those people to answer to. There's a lot of sports fans in that group they don't know anything about baseball, but they do know the excitement of being a part of a winning organization that gets to Game 7 of the World Series. So you may have cut yourself some slack with ownership, certain members of the ownership community by doing that. Yeah,
but don't spend that money and win 82 games because then you lose that slack real bloody fast. People say, wait a minute, we're paying how much? No playoffs?
Here's the bullpen. And I mentioned before, would I necessarily go out and get one of the remaining bona fide closer guys? I'm not sure if I would. Here's my ranking of what's on hand in terms of the 9th inning and how I would use them, who I would use. I would go with this current group if everyone's healthy: Hoffman number 1, Jimmy Garcia 2, Varland 3, Braden Fisher, I never thought I would put 4, but I'm putting him 4. And then, that would be enough to get you through win streaks. Like you don't want to use a guy 3 days in a row, but you want to win 10 games in a row. So you need more than one guy. And then to me, the key that maybe they're thinking about is looming relievers, looming factors. And I include in the looming Ricky Tiedemann, who could start the year in Buffalo in relief. And if he's really doing well, bring him up in May to screw him out of a year of arbitration. And Angel Bastardo,
right,
who's quietly looming, but has apparently has great combination of changeup, fastball that would work well in the bullpen. So, it's not like they're got nothing out there. Do you think that list of potential closing ninth inning guys is accurate, or would you add somebody else, or would you take one of those guys out, or would you just go out and get somebody for that role?
No, I agree with you completely. And I said that when we were talking about what their plan should be into free agency. I said, if people think bullpen is the number one thing because that's how they lost the games and they had to go get a closer, I think they were being foolish. They needed to address the big things first. Rotation was number one, bat number 2. And I think they're doing that. I think adding an arm is obviously imperative in the bullpen, but I don't think you need to go get an Edwin Diaz. I mean, hey, if you could have it all, sure, but you can't have it all. So I think adding an arm into that mix, a good arm, is good enough for now. It's good enough for now. And then, like every bullpen, Griff, you make adjustments through the season. There's guys that perform, guys that get hurt, guys that don't perform, and the trade deadline's magical for relief pitchers. So I would just go add an arm and just focus on the other stuff. You don't need Edwin Diaz. I just don't think that's where you need to go. That's just what I think.
The trade deadline, I forgot, is so important for teams looking for relief guys. But available right now, would you consider Fairbanks, Gregory Soto, somebody like that with a good arm and sort of closing experience? Or how about going back to Sir Anthony and dusting off his shoulder and saying, hey, I hope you didn't take it personally. Would you take this money for us as a setup guy?
Yeah, I think those are all options. I mean, Fairbanks would be number 1 for me if you can get it done and it's reasonable. Even down. Dominguez got a good arm. So you figure you can rein that in and I don't know, teach him some command, I guess. But all those things are possibilities depending on what you do elsewhere. But I think you got to do elsewhere first. That's the focus. Let's do elsewhere. Let's worry about the offense. And like you said, the list you gave is pretty decent for now. It's pretty decent. You're not coming into the season with nothing back there. So I think you can add an arm that's out there and take your chances from there. I think that's the play.
Well, before we wrap, just a news roundup. Alek Manoah going to the Angels. What do you think of that? I think he'll have a chance out there.
The old Alex Perry Manassian connection. Cycle Blue Jays around sometimes, right? I mean, if there's ever a spot for him, it's probably in Anaheim. So hopefully he finds his way. I'm really rooting for the guy. I'm sure you are too. That's a good landing spot for him. So let's see what he's got left, and I hope there's a career there for Alek. But we'll see. I was kind of disappointed he didn't stick with the Braves. Obviously Alex wanted to look at him, and whether he thought he could get him cheaper, even I'm not sure. But passed him on to Perry. So Perry's turn.
The Rule 5 draft, we agree that the Jays are not going to draft anyone. They've got 37 spots on the roster. They haven't announced Ponce yet. So that would be 38. But they don't need to use those 2 spots for Rule 5. But they already got Bastardo that they have to take care of.
Exactly.
But do you think, and we discussed this briefly, but do you think they're worried about losing anyone that they left unprotected? Because they had chances to make, like, they had chances to make a couple of roster moves. I mean, they've got guys like Palmigiani, Adrian Pinto, who's been a good prospect the whole time, Carlos Mendoza, Kasevich, I would be worried about maybe losing shortstop, Manuel Beltre, Yohendrick Panango, Ryan Jennings, or Hayden Younger. I don't see them being that concerned about losing any of those guys.
No, I don't think they're concerned at all. And if they are, I think they're willing to take that chance. Who's going to take any of those guys and stick them on a major league roster for a full season?
For the full
you know
season.
what I mean? You end up getting them back anyways. It's just like we said briefly. I think the Rule 5 needs some adjustments. I don't think the present setup is very good. We need to figure out how guys don't need to stay on a roster for the whole season. Maybe it's a half a season, maybe there's some other way to get guys opportunities in other organizations. But I think there are no worries about losing any players. And if they did, I don't think they're worried about losing any of those guys either, personally.
One last item here. There's news out of Montreal, and they're reviving a bid for expansion team behind a new businessman, a guy that I haven't heard of, but apparently has a lot of money. But it's down in an area where the Autostad was. I remember going to the Autostad for the Grey Cup in whatever year it was there, mid-70s. And it was like they were playing football in the middle of a freeway with big concrete blocks as stands. Like, it was crazy cold with the wind blowing off the river. Like, they better have a better place suggestion for a stadium than there. And this guy, I'm not sure. I mean, we know what a closed fraternity MLB ownership is. And this guy is not a member of the fraternity. Right. So I'm dismissing it as sort of a pipe dream at this point.
Yeah, and that's a shame, isn't it? I mean, there'd be nothing better to have that city back in the major leagues, and every player loves every second of it too. So it's just a gem of a city and the most unique city in sports. So maybe one day it'll happen, but it doesn't look overly promising at the moment. Yeah,
there's too many question marks, more than the Mysterians. So we'll let that go.
They'll probably end up in London before they end up in Montreal.
Well, that's it. So that's it for this week's Exit Philosophy, and we'll be back at you next week. I do have a special appearance, a conversation that'll be coming up with Hazel Mae, who was just named Granny Award winner. I figure that I'll get some new fans from her fan base, but good for her. And so that'll be a conversation probably sometime next week. But we'll be back with a regular episode of Exit Philosophy. And in the meantime, thank you, Mal, for co-hosting, and thank everyone for listening. And don't forget to subscribe on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts, and to let your friends know about it. So thanks, everybody. And thanks, Mal.
No problem.